Hey guys. Mrs. M Storm. Hello, Mrs. M. How's everyone? I don't know if you guys were with me 10 minutes ago, but I'm back. Football as well. Before I jumped off on geopolitics, on what we determine as right wing and left wing, we got our terms right wing and left wing from the French Revolution. It also started the oh, hey, I got a guest request from Brandon. Hey,
Hello.
Brandon. Are you the
Hey, how are you?
Brandon that they've been talking about?
Oh, the chanting in the stadiums.
I don't even know. I'm talking about in my lives, I'm seeing Brandon, Brandon, Brandon.
Oh
There's like
yeah.
this Brandon epidemic going on.
No, that's not me. But it's basically there was a chant at football stadiums that said "fuck Joe Biden," and the reporters, the news reporters, were commenting that they were saying "Let's go Brandon." So the "Let's go Brandon"
Oh,
has it's kind of turned into like when you say "Let's go Brandon," it really means "fuck Joe Biden," but you just don't want to say that.
ah,
Yeah.
okay.
So no, but
I
I was
get it. I
confused
get
because
it.
I joined lives and then I see people commenting, "Let's go Brandon." I'm like, what did I do? But
Yeah, that would probably be funny if I was a Brandon.
anyways, I'm going to work right now, so I only have like 15 minutes, and I was
Okay.
just wondering what are your views, so I can just get a basis of what you believe in.
I'm a socialist.
You're a socialist, okay?
How
Why are
about
you?
you?
Well, I don't really have a political ideology I belong to. I have right wing views. I have left wing views. Like I don't agree with Republicans when it comes to healthcare, but I do agree with Republicans when it comes to national defense, for example. Um,
Okay.
so, for example, I'm in support of a healthcare system where there's a private and public sector as long as everyone is covered. But I would want
Okay.
only U.S. citizens to be covered. For example, and I don't want to get into the Israel and Palestine debate, but um, the healthcare system in Israel works really well because they have a mixture of public and private options. And
Right.
there's basically four major companies, and they compete with each
Mm-hmm.
other for customers. And the government funds
Mm-hmm.
them based on how successful they are, how popular they are,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
they receive private and government money. So it does work, and I think that in any modern country in the world, there needs to be a healthcare system that covers everyone. But
Yeah,
um, I was just wondering what you thought about because I think the two party system is really broken. I think that
I
it doesn't
agree.
give it doesn't give option for third party candidates.
Right.
And I was thinking about when Washington founded the country, he was the one who warned us against political parties,
Right.
and which is why I think that a one party system with everyone running, like you would see on the debate stage, instead of having the Democrat National Convention, the Republican National Convention, and the debates there, you would see Trump on the same stage as Bernie and Ted
Mm-hmm.
Cruz and Hillary, whatever, all of them on the same stage. And when you go
Okay.
and vote for president, you're not voting because they have an R or a D next to their name. You're voting because you like what they're saying.
Mm-hmm.
So what do you think about that?
Well, I part of the reason that uh, Washington and the rest of those guys did not want political parties is because they really wanted to maintain power. They had just won a bourgeois revolution over the monarchy. They created a white ethno state where only white men who owned land could participate in government, and even then, the electoral college had the final say in who was elected. So they really created a system where they had the illusion of choice for those men, and 90% of the country who did not own land or were not a white man couldn't participate in all. It was pretty much a dictatorship. And what I would say is I don't agree with the two-party system at all. I'm not a member of either of the two parties, but I do believe that as people, we have strength in numbers, and that when we unite with an organization that we have a common goal, we have more power and strength to promote that idea and enact change than if we are just individuals. Like, I think part of what they do is rule by divide and conquer. And when we're divided, when we're just one person, how many people say, what can I do? I'm just an individual. But when we unite and we work together, we can, and we have achieved great things. Just not with these two parties that really economically are very similar, and then on social issues have some differences, but really the Democrats just speak empty promises and platitudes to people of color and other oppressed and care about those people or changing the system that is oppressing them.
So you think America, at today's standards, is still oppressing minorities?
I would say that under capitalism, there is always going to be a hierarchy, a socio-economic hierarchy, where there is going to be layers and levels of people in that hierarchy. And that any group that achieves progress is going to have to fight to maintain that progress in order to keep it, or it's going to be undone.
Well, I think your socioeconomic status depends on you, how hard you work, what you have done to get to the top. And also, another thing that I wanted to bring up is that the American system of government isn't exactly a bad system. It's just that the only problem with it is the lobbying. I think in my eyes, the lobbyist system is really what corrupts our politicians. Because in in any other country, you would categorize that as legal, as bribery, and we allow corporate lobbyists to pay both sides, depending on, to pass legislation that supports those big companies. And real capitalism wasn't invented so that 4 major airlines control the entire industry or 5 major search engines. Real capitalism was made so that there could be healthy competition between businesses, not just monopolies on each one. So my question is, if that form of capitalism was to work, where it wasn't just dominated by a few corporate businesses, and it wasn't dominated by the lobbyist industry, would you be more open to a capitalistic society? And if not, why do you think a socialist society would be better?
Yeah, so one thing I'll say is that Vladimir Lenin wrote a book called Imperialism, the Highest Stage of Capitalism. It was in depth about talking about monopolies and cartels. And when I talk about cartels, I'm not talking about, you're right, I'm not talking about like drug cartels.
Yeah.
Cartels in general is a term used to describe what you were talking about when 4 airlines or 4 companies control an entire industry. And that's a cartel. And most industries are run by cartels. And they actually prevent competition and destroy smaller companies from rising up. And our society has come back to the place where we are. And unfortunately, that is what capitalism will always lead to. And until Reagan was elected, there were a lot more regulations in capitalism to prevent cartels. I don't know how old you are, but when I'm in my late 30s, when I was little, every city had their own retail stores. We had more manufacturing. You'd go to one city, they had all different stores. Another Walmart and all that was only down in like Arkansas, and all those regulations were undone. And you talked about healthcare. Health insurance companies were forced to be nonprofit organizations. And being nonprofit organizations, they didn't pay bonuses to executives. They didn't have to have a rising stock price, and healthcare costs were much lower. But with the deregulation, which they lobbied very hard for, is what we have today. So what we to a consolidation of power and wealth, and that we can enact reform to try to slow it down, but we will always have that deregulation, because at the end of the day, even though we have more numbers, they have more power and wealth, and they will lobby and they will pressure the government to enact policies that benefit them, because that's the way the system was created in the beginning to benefit them. Again, by white, wealthy, capitalist landowners who owned slaves and wanted power only for themselves. It's just ingrained. Have more capitalist systems that have more benefits to the people, but the United States is the global center of capitalism, and it's that way from the beginning, and that's the way it was set up to be.
Okay, well, you are a socialist, so I'm wondering which country can you base your ideal government off of that has been a socialist country? Are you talking about? I mean, which socialist country has worked? I mean, it sounds all great on paper, everyone's distribution of wealth and everything, but where does it actually work?
Okay, so what I would say is we believe in something called dialectical materialism. And that means that we would never base our American socialism on another country. American socialism would be based on American culture, the needs of American people, and our history. Okay, so American socialism isn't going to look like the USSR. It's not going to look like Cuba. It's a people-centered system that we would build ourselves. So I can't say what it would look like. It's never been done, but it would be based on us. Now, what I would say with where has socialism not failed or where has socialism succeeded? Socialism has succeeded many, many times. It's right now, in the last 15 years, Bolivia is transitioning to socialism. Cut poverty in half. Worker protections have been improving. Literacy has gone up 80%. In the year 2019, 2 years ago, the US backed a coup to overthrow the president and government of Bolivia. And then the next year, they hold elections where the Socialist Party won again in a landslide. Portugal, which has the benefit of being a European country, has been under the control of three parties for the last several years: the Communist Party, the Socialist Party, and the Green Party. And since those parties have been in power in Portugal, the economy of the Portuguese, the standard of living has become one of the best in Europe. What happens, I'll just say one thing. What happens a lot of time when people implement socialism, whether through reform or revolution, is standard of living goes up, worker protections go up, and then the United States invades, attacks, puts sanctions on them, and then they start to struggle a lot.
No, and I don't mean to be rude or anything, but if socialism works over there, then why aren't you over there? Why are you over here?
Oh, I'll tell you why. Because when you take the word communism, the word community is what that word is about, right? So we care about our community. We care about our family and the people that live around us. A communist is not about escaping or running away. A communist is about improving the material conditions of our society.
Which communist has been able to do that, improve the conditions of a living society? Because the only communist countries I can think of are Vietnam, Cuba, the USSR, North Korea. These are all textbook communist countries, and at the beginning it sounds great. We're going to elevate the poor, give them a voice, but then at the end it leads to a one-party government with a dictator, and that's what generally socialism leads to. So communism is a subtopic of socialism. And
do you know what communism is?
Communism is when the means of production are controlled by the government. I mean, that is literally the textbook definition. But
no, it's not.
It is, because in the communist system, it's about the government controlling things instead of having a private equity in businesses.
That's not what communism is. Communism is a classless, stateless society.
I have 2 minutes left, 2 minutes before I go to work, so just explain to me what communism is. I'd love to hear a definition.
Okay, so socialism is when the state aids in the working class and seizing the means of production for the working class. Communism is a classless, stateless society. Communism has never been implemented. but communism is a destination that the working class hopes to achieve someday. So the term communist country is an oxymoron because we don't believe in a state when we talk about communism. It's the absence of a state.
Okay, well, the last thing I have to say, because I'm literally pulling onto my work right now, is the communist countries that have succeeded in the world, well, they haven't succeeded, but the communist countries that have become communist countries, you see a mass influx of people who would like to leave those countries because they were promised these great things, and in all reality, it just becomes a hellhole, and it becomes a grounding for government enforcement. But I just want to leave off with that. I appreciate you debating honestly.
Thank you.
I'll look into what you said about communism and the definition of it. That's just the
Cool.
definition I've read online, but yeah, it was nice meeting you.
Awesome, you too. And just one more thing, check out Vietnam, like you mentioned. Check out their standard of living
Yeah,
and what's happened to it. Have a good one.
Uh,
What's up, everybody? Communism is where the government profits from our work. That's incorrect. Electric grid, only Russia implemented. Yeah, check out our standards of living. Thank you for the follows, guys. Political theory derived from Karl Marx, advocating class war leading to a society which all Irish outlaw. I like that name, Irish outlaw. Millions leave capitalist nations. Look at Iran, look at Colombia. You know, the funny thing about people talking about immigration, and I live in a major city on the East Coast, and this city is full of immigrants from capitalist countries. Full. And many of them are very, very aware, especially the ones from Latin America, of what the United States has done to Latin America with invasions, with Operation Condor, with economic embargoes, what the United States has done through imperialism. I got a guest request here, and then I'm gonna maybe have to go. But it's an interesting name. Hello.
Yo, what's good, bro?
Hey,
Damn.
what's up? We spoke, right?
Yeah, we talked a little bit ago.
Okay, cool.
Trying to park my car all nicely so that someone can get past me.
Okay. How's your day going?
Dude, it's going pretty good. How's your day going, bro?
It's going all right. It's going all right. I'm off today, so took my wife to the doctor, and then I went to the gym, and now I'm here. So I'm chilling. I'm about to take my kid out to some bubble tea after this.
Dude, dude, that hurt my soul when that guy was saying that communism is when the government owns the means of production. What is that from? Doesn't a book say like
You know what I can say about that idea is that when countries have tried to implement socialism, that is a part of the process of taking the power away from the capitalist and giving it to the worker. But what ends up happening a lot of times is the United States is like, it's like David and Goliath, and these countries come under attack, and the process gets halted usually in that phase of transition, because the state becomes embattled. So a lot of times the state ends up staying in that place of state ownership. But we do not want state ownership. We don't want the existence of a state. We believe the state is an evil that shouldn't exist in the world.
Yeah, exactly. Like what essentially the state is somebody saying that, yeah, I'll take some wealth for organizing your wealth, which is like bullshit.
Yeah, yeah, it is. It is. But we understand. I mean, one thing I like to ask people is when they talk about like communism being good on paper and all that, have you read it on paper? And most people have not. So I understand that kind of thinking because we're not big readers in this. We just believe what we're told.
I can't think of what book. Like everyone like quotes it without knowing that they're quoting it. It's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think it's not Marx. It's like somebody that wrote a reaction to Marx that was from like the US, and then they talk about a lot of that. Like they literally, it says like communism is an idealistic system that could only ever work on paper. And then he like talks about like the cycle of communism and how it always leads to fascism. Like all those ideas that the people just repeat, they're from like one central guy. I can't think of who it is.
You know, one thing I think of when I think about socialist countries who are literally under decades and decades of attack from the US and other capitalist countries, I think of what did the US do during World War II? President Roosevelt, FDR, became president for 4 terms. 4 terms, this guy was president. And they locked Japanese people up in concentration camps. And they, in the US, they created a very authoritarian system while they were at war. And that's only because they were attacked one time by the Japanese militarily. Even civilians were not attacked in Pearl Harbor. Imagine decades and decades and decades of being under attack by the world's largest superpower. What that would do to a society. What would the government do? A tiny little island nation or a little country in South America being under attack. If the US would become basically a dictatorship, what would that country do?
Dude, for real. Dude, have you ever read I read this like firsthand account of a guy that was in Pearl Harbor. He was there when he was a kid, and it like inspired him to join the military. And then after
Mm-hmm.
being in the military, when he came back, and they like had analyzed the wreckage and stuff, what had actually happened, the event that had caused him to join the military, he thought that the Japanese had attacked his house, but really kamikaze was like coming to bomb like an Air Force part, and they shot an anti-aerial cannon up, and the bullet came back down and bombed this kid's house and like killed his whole family.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Whoa.
and
Oh
like
my
I think
God.
that happens a lot, and they cover it up,
Yeah.
and they're like the enemy did this, and really it's just
Yeah.
friendly fire.
Yeah. It's the power of propaganda. And you know, that's one thing I think of a lot of people who are like super nationalistic or patriotic. When you ask them like about the wars we've been in, I think when are we defending our freedom? Like when has the US since World War II defended our freedom? Like when you join the military, what are you actually doing? What are you fighting for?
Well, I mean, and even before then, before World War II, when did we defend our freedom? Like in the
Yeah,
Spanish American War? No. Like,
exactly.
like in the Revolution and World War II, that's the only time we were the good guys. Maybe
Hmm.
that I'm aware of. I don't know. There might be more.
And at the same time, I understand why in this economy, why people join the US military, because there are just not too many options for young people these days to make a living, to feed their family, to get a career, but at the same time understand the Iraq War. Colin Powell died today. This dude was a war criminal. This dude lied to Congress, lied to the country, got the US to go to war. Over 1 million Iraqis died. Thousands of US service members died. They destabilized the whole Middle East for US companies to go in and steal oil. The Iraqi government last year demanded that the US leave, and the US military said, no, we're not leaving. And then you join the military, you think, I'm going to go defend my freedom. You're a colonizer.
Yeah, in the most literal sense, because you're going
Yeah.
somewhere specifically for resources.
I mean, it's just
And it
unfortunate
doesn't make
because,
it,
like, What's that?
It doesn't make it any better if you're not like colonizing it yourself, you know? Like if like we go to places and we like arm groups of people and we like hype them up with our ideas and then like protect them, you know, because like say an oil company might not be specifically run by all the people from the US. There might be some locals that
Hmm.
are involved in it, but we use like the capitalism and the luxuries to like get them wrapped in there. And then we're still
Hmm.
colonizing it by like abolishing their culture and like destroying the land and everything and causing war. Like, you
Yeah.
know, like regardless of if we convince some people, like a minority of people, that we're there for the right reason, like, and they want
I
us
mean,
there.
money talks. Money talks.
Exactly.
Money talks, and money talks for people joining the military. They give if you join the military right now, they give you a Camaro, and you get like a $20,000 bonus.
They
And
give you
these
the
recruiters, you
Camaro.
see, they give you a Camaro, and you see these recruiters, especially in the morning on lives. And I've talked to them. Like I send them messages like, "Oh my God," and it's like, "Oh, I feel so terrible." Because like, is a Camaro worth going to some poor country and shooting people for the profit of US corporations to like take whatever resources that corporation wants, whether it's oil or lithium or whatever? Like, are you going to risk your life for that? Are you going to shoot some person defending their country for that? And I don't know.
Yeah, and I mean, like I know a lot of veterans that are there and or that were there, and they support people being there for the reason of like the Taliban doing whack stuff and like people not having religious freedom. But doesn't there have to be a
Hmm.
better way to go about that? Like actually helping them have a good government or something? Or you think
Hmm.
you just have to let them figure it out on their own?
I do not think that the US should go there and judge how their society. I mean, the United States genociding the Native American people, enslaving blacks, enacting Jim Crow, doing imperialism around the world, thinks it can judge the Taliban. The two of the biggest allies of the U.S. are Israel, who's genociding their indigenous people, and Saudi Arabia, who Saudi Arabia is basically the same thing as the Taliban, except for they're billionaires. They're just rich Taliban. So it's just about money talking,
Yeah.
and it's crazy.
But don't you think that like we should help. Like, I feel like we should help. You mean like the native people in Israel or whatever, like the Palestinians, right? They were
Yeah,
there, and then the Bible told them they could kill them all or whatever.
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
always really confused about that. Like, I don't get why it's okay for them to kill them. Like, because the
I'll
Bible
tell
says
you.
so.
Yeah, I'll tell you a quick story of how I realized this. So my mom is retired now, but she used to work for the airlines. And like 15, 20 years ago, she started flying to Israel. And my mom is like the Holy Land and like going to all the religious sites. And she started meeting Christian Palestinians and hearing them. And my mom was very conservative. So she was super all about Israel, but she started speaking with Christian Palestinians and hearing their stories of how, like, in the middle of the night, the Israeli military will come to your house, give you an hour, point their guns at you, and tell you you have an hour to get out of your home. We're going to bulldoze your home, or we're going to have some European or American family move in, and you're out on the street. And if you fight back, we're going to kill you. And this has happened to millions and millions of Palestinians. It's been happening since 1949 when Israel was created. And just think about that. And think about like Christians in America who support Israel. Think about the Christian Palestinians, if that would help, in thinking, oh, what about you? What if you were thrown out in the middle of the night of your home? that you own. If you fight back, you're looked at as fight back.
Dude, that's crazy. No, I would not. I would just be like yeet into the wilderness. Personally, myself, I would run away from that shit. I would be a refugee, like quick as fuck. Um,
Yeah.
but still, being a refugee is crazy. Have you ever heard of hardcore gourmet report? It's a
No.
Japanese TV show where they go and they interview people that are struggling and they show what kind of food they eat. So like one of the episodes they talk to like prostitutes in Ghana and like child soldiers or ex-child soldiers that are living in a cemetery. Like in another one they
Okay.
talk to like people that are like oh, I just said the word. I'm sorry. I can't think of it. Refugees. They talk to refugees in Serbia and people that are running around trying
Okay.
to capture them. And it's just it's
Okay.
crazy, dude. It's crazy
Yeah.
that that shit happens,
Yeah. Yeah. They
dude.
threw
Like,
about the third of the Palestinian population right out of Israel when they created it. Like
yeah,
I
dude.
have a neighbor that was thrown out.
Dude, that's crazy. Dude, and
She
there's
was a
like
little girl.
people,
She said she walked to Jordan. She was like, I walked to Jordan.
yeah, yeah. That's what like all of them, and it's a lot of people. They're like walking down
Hmm.
railroad tracks and shit. There's like people that are just like
Hmm.
walking with like broken legs, like just like hobbling along because they just have to walk to some country where someone will help them. Like, that's
Hmm.
crazy.
Hmm. And they believe that this fairy tale book gives them the right to do that. And
Yeah,
that they're mainly white Europeans or Americans, that they have some type of biological connection to this Middle Eastern country.
dude.
It's absolutely insane.
Dude, I feel like the military should go to places like that and assist those people. Like, doesn't that make sense? Like,
Sure. Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, really, I think that there's plenty of countries over there that should take care of that situation, you know?
yeah,
I don't want the US military going around the world. I don't want these bases, 800 bases. The US has lost its right to be the police of the world or to even think they're not the police of the world, and we shouldn't think of them as the police of the world. The US needs to just leave everybody else alone.
well, what about how do you feel about like national government, like the United Nations or like international
I,
government?
I think the UN could be a good thing, but like it's the UN is a system where different countries have more power. Like you see, like they'll have all these countries vote on one thing. Like 30 countries will vote to take away all the economic sanctions on Cuba. Like they'll vote to lift the embargo, but the US and England votes to keep the embargo. They keep the embargo.
Yeah.
How does that make sense? You know, like every it's not a fair system, the UN.
Yeah, I feel that. I think there should be like some sort of international government, but I think the UN's whack. I actually went to the UN building in New York and it was really whack. The people seemed like pretty incompetent, honestly. Like they kind of like looked at a
Hmm.
room of 16-year-old kids and they were like, one day we're all gonna die and you guys will have to fix the environment. Like they're
Oh
really
my
concerned
God.
about the environment. It was like
Yeah, I mean
freaky.
it's nice in theory, but in actuality, they don't do much to create peace. You know, it's like suggestions almost that they make to. We suggest that you stop committing genocide to your indigenous population, but they don't have any power.
Uh, Dude, I feel like the
Yo, I'm gonna
US
have to
wants to
jump
be
off.
involved. Yeah.
S- Sorry, I'm gonna have to jump off, man.
All right, peace, homie.
Thank you so much. All right, and thanks guys for listening. Take care.
Have a nice day.